Welcome to Built to Finish. I'm your host, Stephen Pivnik. Join me each week as we explore the journeys of audacious goal setters. This includes experienced founders, CEOs, and entrepreneurs sharing pivotal moments that propel their success. We'll also be talking with endurance athletes who push the limits of physical and mental ability. This show is brought to you by Acresis, offering tailored, high-impact advisory services to help founders get to their finish line with a strategic acquisition or majority investor recapitalization. Let's get started. Today's guest is someone who has built a remarkable career and has a wealth of experience with over 25 years in the industry of logistics and facility software. He also serves on the board of directors of Bello McCree, a nonprofit organization supporting individuals with developmental disabilities. His company has been featured in numerous prestigious lists, including Built-in's 100 Best Places to Work in Washington, D.C., and Baltimore Sun's Top Workplaces for the last 2 years. He is the founder and CEO of SCLogic. Mike Saldi, welcome to the show.
Oh, you were talking about me on that?
Oh, yes, my friend, that is you.
Hey, Stephen, how you doing?
I'm doing great. Thanks so much for being on the show today.
Yeah, no problem.
So for everybody viewing and listening, this is not meant to be a self-serving Acresis commercial, but Mike Saldi wasn't an Acresis customer, and we had a great project together, but I'll let him describe our relationship and how that went. So without any further ado, my first question is, Mike, when it was time to sell your company, even before you met Acresis, what were some of the strategies that you put into place to help you achieve the best possible outcome?
I mean, it probably starts with, so SCLogic's been around for 28 years. So I started it 28 years ago as a completely different business, and we pivoted multiple times. We turned it into a recurring revenue software business, very high retention, great expansion, all those proper metrics. And, as listeners here and most know, recurring revenue SaaS software businesses continue to get more valuable as you build that revenue background, right? And so the reality is, if this thing just keeps getting more valuable and is profitable, why would you ever sell it, right? There's this mentality of when, and the reality hit me at, I would say, 58, 57, that there's not a lot of 60-year-old tech CEOs, right? In particular, there's not a lot of 70-year-old tech CEOs. So, the strategic decision was to realize that, at that age, and now I'm bumping up on 62, that I can't do this forever, right? It can be a younger person's game. There are certainly, very qualified CEOs at my age, but the reality was time was creeping up. So I couldn't just continue to make the company more valuable and then be a platform CEO to go work for another 5 years. So I sort of started with, all right, I'm probably going to be good at this till I'm 67, until the brain starts slowing down. And if I want to be a platform CEO and be invested in by private equity, I need to do that now, like it was back at, my late 50s, but I need to do it at least by the time I'm 60 or 61, so that I still have some runway to go build a company. Because that's something that I very much wanted to do strategically at the beginning, was be a PE-backed CEO of a platform that could go out and do some acquisitions and grow and become more valuable, just because I like to learn and I like to do new things. So the strategic decision was really based on the only thing I can't outrun, which is time and age, and that's really what drove it.
Great. And understood, totally understood. So I know that in building your company, culture was incredibly important to you. I was, blown away by the culture was palpable in your organization. Can you describe it?
It was sort of this combination of a fast growth SaaS software company and a bit of a lifestyle business, right? So it was we like to build this environment of really open communication about where the company's going, what the goals are for the company, beyond just, revenue and metrics, right? Just, how are we going to build people's careers? How are we going to challenge people with new things? How are we going to keep me interested? What can we all do? And throughout this process, even pre-Accresis, I was open with the entire staff about, what this looked like and why that's good for them, why that's good for their career. Everybody shared in the equity, 100% of the people, if you had been here a year before closing, everybody shared in the equity of the upside. So, but really the culture was that the customers are absolutely first, right? And then the employees are second. But if you take care of your customers really well, you get to come into work knowing that the company behind you is going to take care of that customer no matter what the issue might be. And we just had a great culture, great team with very, very low turnover on the employee side. People would stay for a very long time. I have employees who've been with me for over 25 years, a number of them, through this whole journey of changing from a hardware company to a systems integration company to a SaaS software company. We all made those changes together. We all learned it together. None of us came out of the software business. We all started in different places and came together and learned together. And I learned from my employees, and they might have learned a little bit from me along the way. But we had a great run. So
Yeah, there's no wonder you made the top workplaces for the last 2 years. So kudos to the culture that you created there.
and it's not a low pressure place. It's
No.
it's not at all a low pressure place. So I just think everybody knew that we all had each other's backs. There's not a lot of finger pointing going on. There's not a lot of this department did that, and you guys are doing this wrong. And you can always do better. We can always communicate better. But we did, through the entire process, had very open communication.
That's awesome. So which resulted in, I'm sure, a lot less water cooler talk and a lot less gossip.
Oh my God, I hate that stuff.
Tell me about it.
Just the conspiracy theories grow, right? There's always a little bit of a nugget of truth behind them, but just watching, if there's no information, right, it's a vacuum, and people just fill it in with things, and I just think that's unproductive.
100%. It's total poison, and you and I are 100% on the same page on that topic. So moving on to the sales process, I know that you went through an extensive process of looking for the right investment banker. Talk a little bit about what that was like and what made you decide on the investment banker that we ended up picking.
I mean, at the beginning of this process, I barely knew I needed an investment banker. So really that was about the middle of the Accresis engagement. So, needing an investment banker, I had talked to them. I knew I would need an investment banker. I didn't know what the right type of investment banker was. I have inbound calls. A company our size has inbound calls and emails
all the time, right?
Yeah, I still get them. Trying to sell us, and the investment banker process. I didn't know I had no idea how to go about that. So I'd had initial quotes. We actually did sort of an RFI because these pre-Accresis that lots of investment bankers were coming at us, and I did an RFI. I brought in investment bankers. I got all pitches from them and the percentages of the deal that they wanted, even with this competition, was what I thought were pretty high. And then after, the Accresis process was completely different, and they had really a calendar of this 3-year process, and right in the middle of that was choice of investment banker. We did, with the help of Accresis, we did an RFP. We brought in, I believe it were 6 initial candidates. They all made proposals. I think we had 3 make final proposals. They did an additional presentation. We selected one and then negotiated with them, and we got, not only did we get what I would consider the best investment bankers we could have possibly gotten. Like they were never inbound calling me. These were people that work completely differently. And we got, not only did we get a great deal, we got a great investment bankers, and it was a great process. Could not have done it ourselves, even with advisors that I already had that were chiming in. So it was just a great process.
That's really good advice. Like I could not have done it by myself. I think a lot of founders, myself included, in the early days, were are penny wise, pound foolish. They're looking at the fee that an investment banker is going to charge and say like, why would I pay so much money to sell my company? This company is going to sell itself. And I'm sure you would agree that that could not be further from the truth. Investment bankers are worth their weight in gold and will double, if not triple, their fee in the extra enterprise value they're going to get you.
Oh, absolutely, undoubtedly. Just particularly, at the very end, crazy helpful, right? Because you feel like everything is falling apart, and just had these, absolute professionals in our court who not only wanted to get the deal done, they wanted to get it done to my satisfaction. And there were a lot of times where I just pushed back. It would put the deal at risk, and they never came to me and said, "Mike, we got to get a deal done." We stopped it a number of times, and they always were. They were always looking out for me. And I can't imagine that everybody has that great of an experience with the bankers, but we certainly did.
No, it was a phenomenal experience, and I'm happy to give them a plug. Who were they?
It was Intrepid out of Los Angeles, who we never would have found. So.
Yeah, great firm, and I agree. It was a really, really well run and smooth process, and obviously got the best optimal outcome for you and everybody else involved.
Yeah, I think we did. I think we sent out. I'm making numbers up here, but the initial list we went out to was probably 200 private equity investors, as well as a few strategics, not a whole bunch. That wasn't my desired outcome, but we did want to actually sort of boil the ocean and make sure that at least we got everybody to see it. I think they sent out 100 SIMs. They had, that means they had over 100 half-hour conversations, this team with those potential investors. The numbers came down to, I think there were ultimately 20 people very interested who got more information and longer phone calls. Ultimately, we got a number of IOIs, probably 10. I know I did 8 4-hour management meetings. Everybody was still in the game after those management meetings, so it wasn't that it was tough. It was, I never would have been in that position to do so, to actually deal with just such, everybody we talked to on the investor side, they were all quality people. They continued to just blow me away, and in the level of quality that the investment bankers brought us, and people that they eliminated that I don't even know about, that they could just tell we're not. They could tell we're not serious. So it was good. It was great.
Like we just said multiple times, it was an incredibly well-run process, and they definitely got the best result possible.
Yep.
So
Yeah.
what was it? I mean, I've been in your shoes, and other founders have been in your shoes. What was it like, running your company full time while going through a sales process, which is also a full-time job in and of itself?
Well, what made it really easy is we did these. I wouldn't say really easy. What made it easier was this openness I had with the entire team. So we did a monthly AMA, where monthly all hands meeting with the entire company, where I would give them an update on the process, and I would be just totally open about where we were, what kind of offers we were getting, what kind of investors were interested in partnering with us. So I didn't have this need to have secrecy and closed door meetings and offsite conference room stuff. So we would just bring people in, put them in the conference room, and people would be like, "How'd the meeting go?" And I'd be like, "It was great. These are nice people. They were good," or "That one was particularly tough." Or so we all just talked right down to every level of the company. We just kept talking about it. And I can't tell you the number of people that told me, "Mike, you're being an idiot. This is going to bite you in the ass. You should not be so open about this. Some news is going to get out. Something's going to break." And I just said, "Well, that's how I'm doing this, because that's just my personality. And I'm not recommending it for everybody, because not everybody has our team of sort of loyal and people." And again, they all had they had some upside with this deal happening, but it was really hard. It kind of sneaks up on you. because you just don't know what the future holds, what partner you're going to choose, whether it's ever going to close, how this thing is going to go forward. And the stress just crept up on me. I mean, geez, I lost a whole bunch of hair.
It looks like you have plenty left.
No, it's just long. There's nothing left. There's no, I mean, I had a lot more hair even a year ago. The stress just sort of builds, and that stress isn't about the dollars or the money. It's about, what does this mean? Where's the company going to go? Is this in fact going to close? And then, we were, with Accresis' help, I was fortunate to hire a very experienced CFO, which was a change we made early on in the Accresis process. And also just an incredible head of products who, really, really helped. Both of these gentlemen had been through this process before, and they were like my counselors along the way. And then the only other thing you don't understand is when this gets down to, I am not trained. I mean, I went to engineering school, so I think I took accounting 101 and maybe a finance class. And I'm so old that we didn't have Excel at the time. So it was all, this was all done in ledgers. So right. that was my accounting knowledge, other than what I learned along the way. And they start getting down to, networking capital and, getting funding to manage the growth. Just having these two experienced folks who had been through this before, we could literally just sit down every morning for an hour and just go through what's happening. The last 6 weeks of the process, there's an entire vocabulary that I had another friend of mine who actually is a multiple exit founder, says, these are things you don't need to learn about. So I'd be like, what is this? What are they talking about? Why is this giant spreadsheet going back and forth? What do those numbers mean? And he just looked at me and he goes, you don't need to understand this. As long as you trust your advisors, you trust your attorneys, and your CFO and your product folks know what they're doing, you don't need to learn this because you're never going to use this skill again. So I took great comfort in that. I guess in that advice.
Well, never say never, because you may do this again.
Oh no, I will do it again, but I still won't need to learn all that crap.
100% true. So I just learned about another thing you and I have in common. Accounting 101 was probably the only college class that served me for like 5 to 10 to 15 years in the future. Right before I dropped out of college, I still remember that Accounting 101 class, and I'm beyond thankful that I took it. But you touched upon a really, really important topic, which I can't speak highly enough about. And that's, surrounding yourself with people that have been through this process before, because otherwise the process is fraught with pitholes and problems and issues. And it makes it so much easier when you have especially a CFO and then other members on the executive management team that have done this before.
Right. It is the folks that had been doing product and, product finance and sales for me were folks that we all grew up together. So all very, very loyal, unbelievable level of trust, put all of their effort in, but there came to a point, there came to a point that they just hadn't seen it before. There was no pattern recognition whatsoever. And so they were trying to learn as fast as I was, and it was better. We kept all those people on. We put new people in those positions to help run it. Some of those folks chose to leave afterwards. Some of them, while we reorganized, didn't make it through that reorganization. But it was probably the hardest counseling that Accresis had to give me is, Mike, your loyalty is important, but the rest of the employees are depending on this company growing and us being successful, and we need to put some different people in charge. So it was that was the hardest part of learning, is to actually look at your company in a different way and move forward on those positions. And those are the things that I would lose sleep over, because these are folks that had been through the Y2K. Remember that?
Oh my God, yes.
2001, when people stopped buying stopped buying all IT assets. We went through the great financial crisis together. We went through COVID together, right? We did all these, we did all these things and made the company survive. They were there for the pivots. We all learned together. And, having those regular meetings with you and the rest of the Acrisys team was, nothing was urgent, but things needed to change, and the outcome wouldn't have been as great.
Yeah, I mean, these are all, gut wrenching decisions, and it's really from an advisory perspective, it's challenging to give this tough love, but the tough love is necessary because at the end of the day, these are the best decisions, possible for the company to continue to grow and thrive and achieve the best possible outcome. But yeah, I can't tell you the amount of countless days and hours of sleep that I lost over the same exact decisions that you had to make. So it's unfortunately, it's par for the course.
Yeah, and I chose to lose sleep over that stuff. I could have thought, differently. I'm learning, post investment, a completely different way to look at a business as a grouping of executors that get things done, and the community comes with that. But the first priority is the business, and I will admit that I did not, and I'm learning that that's actually a really good way to operate. But it's really hard to bootstrap a business. I mean, we never had any debt until post COVID to actually make this company grow and be able to afford the type of people that we need to put in place. So we were bootstrapped all the way, and and the only way you can do that is through that level of community.
Exactly. Sounds very, very familiar.
Yeah, it's a different way to operate, that I'm being challenged now to learn new ways to run a business, which is, for a lot of SaaS founders, they're like, you're just learning that now. You're just learning that now. But I've had my head in this company for such a long time that it's good to learn new stuff.
No, I hear you. Always be learning is one of my mottos. So you mentioned you had a stock option plan for almost every employee there, which is great. Besides the stock option plan, how clean was your cap table, and how much work was required to get that to a place which would make due diligence go smoother?
Well, again, we never had our cap table was as clean as it could possibly be. We never took money from the outside. There was never an outside investor. Every single person on the cap table was either a former employee of the company who did something meaningful for the company's growth. So everybody that wasn't working here that had actual stock options earned their money. Even if they hadn't been here for 10 or 15 years, they certainly contributed early on in the company's success, and a lot of them got very large paydays. And then the rest of the cap table was simply a product, a thing that my attorney came up with 20 years ago called a UAR, which is unit appreciation rights, which is basically a bonus that is tied to the stock price at closing. So it was taxed at regular income. There was no need to send them, no need to send them 10Ks every year. It was basically a promise from the company that when there was a majority change of control, that they would receive a bonus in, 1-for-1 for whatever the stock price was. So the cap table was very, very, very clean. Even the debt that we got, the growth debt that we got, did not have any warrants or anything tied to it. It was just a cash success fee. So the cap table was very simple. I was fortunate that we could grow bootstrapped for so long that we did not need to go outside, and have an outside investor. Maybe it would have been bigger. Maybe it would have been a greater company. I don't know, but
Who knows?
the cap table part was very, very simple.
No, kudos to you for a company that has been around as long as yours has. It's very rare for a cap table to be as clean as yours was, and there's usually years worth of work required, to find those, 1% and 2% shareholders where commitments were made to them literally on a bar napkin. But at the end of the day, those are binding stock grants, and they need to be cleaned up. And chasing down these folks in the 11th hour is really complicated. So that process needs to start. a year, if not two, prior to the actual sales process.
Right. Right. So that wasn't that wasn't by plan, but I had a father who passed away 2 years ago, who was a serial entrepreneur and taught me taught me most of what I know. And he was always very adamant about external investors, particularly anybody that has any sort of control. And I just sort of kept it that way. And again, I could have, we could have been bigger, we might have been smaller, but I certainly didn't have shareholders to answer to on a regular basis. So we had no board meetings. We didn't have any bank meetings. We didn't have all those things companies have to go through when they get more complicated. We didn't have those at all. I mean, Accresis had to teach us how to have a board meeting. We used to do, remember, we did fake board meetings. We would have to make all the employees, work up their quarterly board decks and get them comfortable presenting to the Accresis folks. And those were just great. But we had, prior to Accresis coming, we had no idea how to even do a board meeting or why you did them, because we'd never had anybody to answer to except ourselves.
And the progress you guys made was incredible. I mean, I remember like it was yesterday, the very first board meeting and the decks that were created and the amount of people that were there versus the 2 or 3 board meetings in the final quarters leading up to the sale. I mean, I'm sure you would agree that the difference was night and day.
Yeah. It was strange. I've never been a dashboard sort of guy. I've always just been focused on the customers and adding customers and growing those customers, but more importantly, keeping them. And, all the metrics and things about, support hours being used and how many hours are being, all those measurements that are very standard in a SaaS software company. We never even thought to do them. We were making money and we were growing, and I would go to visit customers and, I would ask them questions like, what would happen if we took your software away? What would you do? And they'd just look at me like, you can't possibly take our software away. We wouldn't know how to operate. And that just told me we were doing everything right.
That's a great question to ask your customer. What would you do if my software went away? And if you see a look of fear and shock in their eyes, you're super strategic and valuable to them.
Yeah. One of the things that the head of product we brought in, Ankur, taught me is such a great guy. We would go see his first week of work. He said, let's go see some customers. And we actually walked down, and the software that we provide is, it's logistics software for basically the bowels of facilities and buildings and how they operate, all that stuff that moves around in the basement and goes up and down elevators to actually operate the business, not necessarily the revenue side of the business, like all the things that you need to run it. He would go down and he would be sitting with a customer and he'd watch them use our software. But he wasn't looking at our software. He was seeing what else he had open on their desktop. And he would say, what other software do you need to use all day? And then they would say, well, I got to get an ERP system and do this. And I've got to jump into this asset management system and do that. And they're jumping back and forth between applications. He said, what? And then we leave the meeting and he'd go, we have to figure out how to keep these customers who use our software probably 4 hours a day. We have to keep them in our software 8 hours a day. So we have to figure out the connections and why is he going to that asset management system? Why is he jumping out of our software? How do we keep him in our screen all day? Apparently that's a very common product management methodology, but I had never looked at it that way. And actually we changed product course over the last, he was here 2 years, and changed course and really started designing the product around how do we keep our core users, our everyday hardcore users, how do we keep them in our software all day? And the product portfolio began to just explode in a very positive way. And then we stopped doing other things that didn't keep them in our software. It was just other stuff customers would ask us for, but it didn't really expand our footprint inside the company. So it was really just such a great learning experience. Never would have known that that's a way to think about product. So it's probably not a SaaS founder laughing at me right now, but whatever.
No, listen, for anybody that's not doing this, I think it's wonderful advice. If you want to perform the best type of market research, do what Mike and Ankur did, visit customers and watch them use the software. and learn hands on what they're using in your software, what they're not using, and as you said, which I love, what other pieces of software are they using to get the job done, and then build your product roadmap from those learnings.
Seems obvious. Seems obvious now.
In hindsight, right? Totally obvious.
Yeah, it was a light bulb, because I've been doing this for 25 years. So, and I've always visited customers. I like being in front of customers. I like walking around. You can't really understand their problems unless you sort of walking in your shoes is silly. I'll be wearing a blazer, but I'm down in these warehouses, but still walking around and just watching them operate and use our software. If, you go out to Ohio State University and watch that team of 30 logistics people attack the FedEx trucks when they get there in the morning and try and get those trucks emptied because they only have a certain number of docks, and the amount of material it takes to supply, this is not student mail, just the material it takes to supply a university of that size. These folks had to work, and to just watch a pause in our software for 1 second per item. And we're like, wow, how do we get that second out of there? That my industrial engineering background is all about how do I reduce steps? How do I reduce seconds in different areas? And it can learn so much. I would always ask permission. Can I take a video of this so I can remember like what your guys' energy level was to just get your jobs done every day? And we just focus on, how do we consistently improve that process?
Yeah, fantastic market research. Fantastic for all the founders and CEOs listening that don't go and visit customers. And I know there's many that don't. I think you're doing your company a disservice by not doing what Mike just described.
Right. Well, and I think it probably doesn't apply to everybody, right? If you're not, if our software are used by the people that operate the building, and again, they're in it all day and they're using it. So it's really it's a piece of operational software, right? If you're providing a tool, a tool for some other process that really is just hey, I use this thing occasionally, right? You're probably not going to learn as much, but man, you walk through the basement of a pharmaceutical manufacturing company, and watch the things that are moving around that have nothing to do with making drugs, that have nothing to do with distribution of that product, but all the things that have to feed into that operation. That's where you learn. Like I remember being in pharmaceutical manufacturer in Sweden and being in the basement and walking past these just giant pallets of stuff in a hallway in this beautiful building. And, I'm like, what's that stuff? Well, we've been emailing the user, each pallet is worth $3 million. And we've been emailing the user to, where do you want us to bring this stuff? Like, where should we bring it? And it turns into this, game of telephone, right? And so we help them figure out how to be notifying that person and say, look, this stuff's going to move, or we're going to return it. How do we move those items? But you don't learn about those things and see those opportunities unless you're out in front of a customer.
Totally agree. And you learned so much doing that. So now that the deal is done, have you had more time to focus on your hobbies? And if yes, what are those hobbies?
No, not really. My hobby is traveling to watch live music. That's what I really like to do. But there's only so many music festivals to go to in their calendars. We've done that, but we haven't escalated it. I like watching. Watch a lot of YouTube. The best value you can possibly get is pay the $16 a month for YouTube Premium.
I agree. Totally agree. It's much better than the cable bill.
Yeah. There's no better learning. There's no better way to keep filling my brain. I do hope to take a little bit more time off this spring. I'm not a big vacation, sit on the beach guy. I had very great difficulty even putting my work email down to do so. The biggest change is not being, the person 100% directing the forward look in the business, right? So now I'm part of the executive team who, by the way, the acquiring companies, the people, we have such great chemistry. Also, a company with a no assholes policy, very high performance, customer support, very low churn. We're going to be a great combination but not being able to direct 100% of the roadmap is very new. It's a very new experience for me, and I'm trying to figure out how to lean into that a little bit, and learn an awful lot about their go-to-market strategy, and how they acquire customers, and then how we can work with those together. I have absolutely no seller's regrets on who Acresis ultimately helped us, the direction they ultimately helped us choose.
Well, that kind of says it all. There's no seller's regret, that means you get the best deal possible for yourself, for all of your employees, for the other stakeholders, and there's still a lot of room for growth, and you will get the proverbial second bite of the apple when that occurs in the future, which is a seller's dream.
That's the hope. So far so good. We'll check in later, right?
Exactly. Well, fingers crossed for you. Congratulations on everything that you've done with SCLogic. Best of luck to you in this new endeavor. I'm sure it's going to be fantastic, and I look forward to catching up on another episode on everything that's going great over there.
Yeah. Got to figure out what's next.
Exactly. Thank you, everybody, for listening to this episode of Built to Finish. We really appreciate your time. If you enjoyed this episode, please like and follow for future episodes. We've got some great guests coming up in the future. And if you found any of the information that Mike shared valuable to somebody in your network, please share this episode with them. Thank you very much for listening. That's a wrap for this episode of Built to Finish. Thank you for tuning in. For show notes and more details, head over to podcast.stephenpivnik.com. Special thank you to our sponsor, Acresis, offering tailored, high-impact advisory services that help founders get to their finish line with a strategic acquisition or majority investor recapitalization. Catch you next week.